Hello everyone. Welcome to another session of Word of Tomorrow Knowledge Delivered. Before we go into it, I want to inform you that this session is being recorded. We have a very new feature today. This webinar is not only available in English, but also translated into Spanish and French. There is a button at the bottom where you can switch into another language channel. And if you face any difficulties, my team is available through the chat. My name is Daliyana Hamid. I'm part of the Deutsche Post DHL group organizing this event, and I will be moderating this webinar today. I would like to give a special welcome to all of you who are attending for the very first time. And for you, I would like to introduce Word of Tomorrow briefly. Every month, my team and I from Go Teach SS Children's Villages Youth Can and Teach for All invite different speakers each month. We want to reach you, the young people that are listening today, because we think you are the Word of Tomorrow, and we want to deliver you the knowledge you need to make the world a better place, inspire others, and help others. Today, we will be talking about mindfulness and the power of the brain. And this is why we have Daliyana Hamid joining us as our key speaker. She is not only a logistics veteran working at Deutsche Post DHL Group with 20 years of experience in this industry, but she has also a great passion for helping others, communities, through accessible and inclusive yoga, as well as evidence-based mindfulness and resilience training. So welcome, Daliyana. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Elena. Really great to be here.
Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more to our audience?
Yeah, sure. And I'm guessing that we'll be getting to know each other a little bit better later on. So as Elena has already introduced, I've been working in the logistics industry for about 20 years now. And I have been coincidentally with Deutsche Post DHL as well for 15 years. And I'm actually from Singapore, and I come from a multi-ethnic family, so meals are always interesting. And I am currently based in Bonn, Germany.
Amazing, great. So as you said, we will get to know each other, but we also want to get to know our audience. And no matter how you've joined today, either via Zoom or the live YouTube stream, you have the possibility to engage and participate. And we use Slido. Some of you might have used it before. So pick up another device and join us via the link that is posted in the chat, or scan the QR code shown here on the slide and enter the hashtag Daliyana in order to participate. So I hope you all have the possibility to join Slido. This is the way we will collect your questions, but now we would like to ask you some questions. So first of all, when you think about mindfulness, how would you describe that in one word? So Daliyana, I assume you will be sharing more in your presentation, but what actually does mindfulness is to you?
It looks like they're all experts already.
Okay, so you definitely agree here. So we have balance, presence, breath, peace, calm. Very nice, grounded.
I like chilled.
Yeah, amazing. We have a lot of experienced people joining, I assume. Okay, so calm and peace, most favorite words, yeah. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you. And we go to our next question, actually. So our topic is mindfulness. We now seen that most of you know already a little bit about mindfulness, but what do you actually want to learn today? What do you want to take away from this webinar? Meditation, yeah. We actually have a little practice just after this. Nice. Okay. Relieving stress. Very good. So, Daliyana, this openness to learning is very important, don't you agree?
Absolutely, especially to relieve stress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these days and the last few months have been stressful for a lot of people in various ways. So I think we will learn a lot from you today how we can help ourselves and help others by teaching them more about mindfulness.
And someone has also written in the chat that mindfulness is also about having distance to reality. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Great. Fantastic. So thank you very much for your answers. And actually, Daliyana, I would already hand over to you. And let's see if we can relieve the stress that has piled up during the last few days. Today is Friday, so get us into the weekend mood.
That's right. So your wish is, your wish will come true now, because a lot of you seem to be asking about meditation. So if we can move across to the next Slido, maybe before we get into that, I'm really curious to know how you're feeling right now. Curious, perfect. Tired, I feel you. Sleepy, yes. My French is not so good. Stressed out. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear. Really stressed. Okay, got it. And let's just give it a few more seconds for a few more of you to have the opportunity to put that into the Slido. All right, so there seems to be a theme here. So quite a few of you are stressed, tired, sleepy, and anxious. And a couple of you are also asking about meditation. So let's give that a go. So I'd like to invite you to come into a comfortable seated position and keeping your spine straight and upright. And the invitation is for us all to now find an object of our focus. So we will circulate our awareness to different bits of our body and just find where it feels most comfortable for you to rest your attention. And if it's comfortable for you to close your eyes, go ahead and close your eyes. If you prefer to keep them open, leave them softly gazed, looking down on the floor, not really focusing too sharply onto anything. And the invitation is for you to check where your hands are, if they're comfortable on your lap, or if they're comfortable maybe on your chest, one on your belly, or if you like, you can also maybe just hold yourself if that's comfortable and comforting for you. And for some of you, maybe you can just have one hand in a fist and cradle that one fist with the other hand and leave it gently on your lap. And just bring all of your attention to the sensations in your hands. Can you sense your blood flowing through your hands? The throbbing of your pulse? Can you feel the skin, the warmth? And just noticing what paying attention to your hands feels like. Is it comfortable for you? And if at any point of time of your practice, you feel like opening your eyes or focusing on something else, that's perfectly fine. Now let's shift our awareness to our feet. The feeling of the ground, of the Mother Earth beneath our feet. The skin along the bottoms of our feet. And feeling all of the sensations in your toes, in your feet, your heels. And shifting your focus to your sense of hearing. Seeing if you can pick up on as many sounds as possible. Allowing yourself to pick up on the different layers of sounds without getting too caught up on any one sound or trying to label them. And just checking in if it's comfortable for you to pay attention to sounds, or if you had preferred your hands or your feet. Now shifting your focus to the touch of the air against your nose. How it feels against the tip of your nose. Right nostril, left nostril. What the breath feels like in your chest. And if it's comfortable for you to leave your hand on your chest or to hold yourself while you're focusing on your breath, go ahead and do so. And just noticing of all of the areas you brought focus to, which one felt most comfortable for you? Now take a deep breath in and fully exhale through your mouth, letting go of all of that and opening your eyes and coming back to the space here we're in. And now the invitation is for you to tell us after those few minutes of practice with the next Slido, how are you feeling right now after a few minutes of practice? Staying relaxed, calm. We might have put a few people to sleep, I think. Calm. Needing more. I hear you. Lovely. So more of you are putting in calm, relaxed, relaxed. And for whomever who had put in same, yeah, I feel you. Sometimes we need just a little bit more to come to a different shift, to a shift in how we're feeling. So perfect. So thanks a lot for sharing how you're feeling now after a few minutes of practice. As you can see, with just a few minutes, you actually can be more aware of how you're feeling, like saying you need a little bit more. And you can also feel a sense of calm. So perhaps we can go into the topic of mindfulness itself now. And I would love to share my screen with you so that you can also see what we're talking about. I hope that's working. But before we get into that, maybe just a few more words about who I am. So as Elena has already introduced me, I won't be giving you a biographical download of where I've been, how I've come to be here, but I am a reformed mindfulness skeptic. So it's a little bit funny that I'm here today to talk to you about mindfulness. And I'm also a recovering perfectionist, thanks to mindfulness as well. And no surprise, I am here today because I am a contemplative meditation teacher trained in the yogic tradition. And I happen to be a certified teacher in mindfulness and emotional intelligence with the Search Inside Yourself organization that was first founded at Google. And I'm also a yoga teacher. I love the water and stand-up paddling, but sometimes stand-up paddling does not love me. I'm often in the water, and I really hate running. So it's probably good that I actually like meditating more. And I am what my friends would also call a crazy cat and plant lady. So I've got tons of plants at home, but not hundreds of cats, just 2 of them. And if you're here today, like one of or a couple of you had said, you're curious about how mindfulness can help you in life. And the good news is I have some ideas. Now, the world that we live in is brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. The systems that we live in today are fragile because we're often not thinking big enough that everything in the world is actually interconnected. And COVID has shown us just this. And as a result, many of us are also anxious, often on the lookout for the next thing that could go wrong. And the standard cause and effect model no longer works. So everything is interconnected. So what may seem like a small mistake here can result in a huge failure down the road. And we can't always predict this. And because of that, it's causing us great confusion from day to day. So nothing seems to make sense. And on top of that, the World Economic Forum predicts that by 2025, 87 million jobs will be displaced. But the good news is 97 million new jobs will be created. So what this actually means is my job, our jobs, and your dream job is evolving this very second. And lots of think tanks and key HR thought leaders rate resilience as one of the most important, if not the most important skill to help us respond to changes a lot better. But how would we be able to build resilience if we're often distracted in this world? And we'll go into that in a few seconds. Let's try to understand what resilience really means. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from challenging situations, to effectively adapt, to change, and to thrive. And what this really means is it's about cultivating a sense of calm, clarity, and stability, even when things are really stressful and overwhelming. And just think about our daily stresses in life. So have a look at this. This probably looks very familiar to a lot of you. Just watching that makes me feel really stressed. A lot of times we are rushing from place to place, and sometimes months go by and we don't really know how they flew by. And maybe in the video, our commute today is much shorter than that because a lot of us are now working or studying from home. But in many ways, we are still rushing from virtual meeting to virtual meeting. And if breathing were not automatic, we may even forget to breathe sometimes. So stress is something that we live with every single day. But actually, stress is not all that bad. Stress is our body's immediate reaction to a perceived threat, a challenge, or a scare. So it's really there to help us stay alive. Now, these threats can be small and mild, like a very annoying message on WhatsApp or email, or it could be real, like an acute stressor, like a large truck coming at you at full speed. So the threat can be real or imagined. And our nervous systems have evolved to signal if a danger is present so we can respond appropriately and stay alive. But actually, some stress is actually good. And this is what is called eustress. So some of you who are in school and love charts might actually like this. So if you're in eustress, it energizes and motivates us into performing so that we're at our best. And we are actually designed to recover really quickly from eustress. The problem, however, is when our stresses tend to pile up and when we stay in a high state of activation, we can experience bad stress. So we can experience fatigue, exhaustion, burnout, or even meltdown. And this can affect our overall well-being, mental or physical, or emotional, and also our relationships, how we perform at work or at school. And in times of crisis, like we're going through right now with COVID, amongst other things, most of us are probably experiencing more stress than we're used to, and maybe we're not even aware of it. So more than ever, it is important for us to cultivate resilience. So how do we do that? And you may have guessed it, it's with mindfulness. But first, let's have a look at what mindfulness means.
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be. Just as an example, driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. With just a little bit of mindfulness, in that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts, I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road, screaming at them with your kids in the back of the car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, you might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I would say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non-judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you, rather than just reacting blindly. Let me just close by saying, mindfulness is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not going to render your life a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows. Nonetheless, this is a superpower, and one that is accessible by you immediately.
So what is mindfulness? It means paying attention to what's happening in the present moment, in our minds, in our body, and in our external environment, with an attitude of curiosity and kindness. In short, it really means to be aware. Now, this way of paying attention has great benefits and possibilities. It brings awareness to what's present right here, right now, and allows us to see clearly what is really going on. Then we can act wisely without bursting out like a volcano. But it's also important to note that it's not about being emotionless. We can experience strong emotions from time to time. And emotions are good because they inform us of what's not working for us. Maybe there's a lot of stress at home, at work, or at school, or maybe we still happen to live in COVID-19 crisis. But the point is, can we be aware of it? And can we bring mindfulness to these emotions in a way that can bring calm to ourselves? Now, even though we can all practice mindfulness, this superpower that we all have access to, it is actually quite difficult, which is why we call it a practice. Now, for many a millennia, ancient traditions from the East, from Egypt and the Americas have long known of its benefits. And science is only starting to catch up on its benefits since the 1970s, and it exploded in terms of research from the 2000s onwards. Our brains are plastic. Now, what this means is everything that we say, think, or do changes our brain. It rewires our brain so that we can actually change the way our brains are functioning. So the practice we had done earlier, that few minutes of practice where we were bringing our focus to our feet, our hands, or our sense of hearing, that's actually activating the part in our brain that is also responsible for our emotions. So strengthening that part of our brain can help us to better manage our emotions and stress. But why is mindfulness actually important? It is actually the foundation for self-awareness. So some of you had written earlier in the Slido that when you think of mindfulness, you think of self-awareness. That is 100% accurate. So mindfulness helps us to be aware. And self-awareness means to know one's internal states, preferences, resources, and intuitions. But it's also when we are aware can we then start to manage our emotions and stresses in life? Now, there are many different ways for us to manage our different stresses in life, but I'd like to share with you just one today. Self-compassion. Self-compassion means being kind and understanding to ourselves when confronted with personal failings or just general challenges in our life. And this definition comes from Dr. Christine Neff. She's a foremother, I like to call, of research in self-compassion. And what self-compassion really means is being able to show ourselves the same kindness that we would extend to someone close to us who might be struggling. And it includes 3 elements, and no surprise, mindfulness is one of that. So being aware of what's happening in our minds and with our emotions, but not getting so involved in it that we cannot function. And it's also about understanding that we are not in this alone, that human suffering is very much a part of the shared human experience. It's our common humanity. And with self-kindness, that's really about whether you can meet yourself with warmth, just like you would someone you love or care for. The challenge is today, many of us associate self-compassion with being soft, or for fear that it will make us look soft at work or school or lose our drive and motivation. But this cannot be further from the truth. Researchers have found that in practicing self-compassion, we are actually enhancing our capacity to broaden our perspective, which is a key skill in not just resilience, but leadership as well. Leadership, whether in school, in our communities, or at work. And it also increases our motivation. And if you think about it, if we cannot be compassionate to ourselves, how can we be compassionate to other people? Which brings me to why mindfulness actually really is so important. It's not just about self-awareness or self-management. These mean nothing without context and in a vacuum. It's really about how we're using mindfulness and self-awareness and all of those skills to be able to connect to the people and the communities around us, and by extension, the world around us. Mindfulness is the foundation to self-awareness, and therefore it's the ability to experience and understand what others feel, while maintaining a clear discernment about our own and the other person's feelings and perspectives. So the practice in mindfulness and self-awareness also helps us to understand what someone else is going through. Now, what's important about empathy to note is it's not about agreeing. We can empathize with what someone else is going through without necessarily agreeing with them. So it's often easier to empathize with someone we actually agree with. And research has shown as well that the area in our brain responsible for processing our own emotions is similar to the area in our brain that helps us to understand someone else's emotions. So that shouldn't come as a surprise. If we can relate to it ourselves, we can relate to others as well. So the more we practice, the more we can rewire our brains, and the more we are then wired to empathize with other folks. So we are social creatures. We are hardwired for empathy. However, empathy is just the start of the more meaningful relationships that we can have in life, at work, in our communities, and at school. This is Joan Halifax. She is a Buddhist nun who pioneered healthcare for the dying. And she defines compassion as the capacity to be attentive to the experience of others, to wish the best for others, and to sense what will truly serve others. Now, there is a Buddhist saying that I really love, which is to live with a soft front and a strong back, which means that we can live with an open heart to the world, but with the courage to do what is right. And empathy forms the basis of compassion, and compassion can come in many forms: by speaking up for someone, by undoing a wrong or a social injustice, or protecting someone, or sometimes even just staying quiet when someone just needs the space to speak and share about something challenging in their lives. So ask yourself, how can mindfulness help you, your friends, your families, your communities, and the world around us? So in closing, before we go to Q&A, mindfulness is key to our future, to the world of tomorrow, to your world. And mindfulness is the movement from awareness to management to connection. And that awareness of others is the basis for empathy and compassion. So knowing what you know now about mindfulness and how it can help you and the world around us, I would like to leave you with one last thought. Think about how you will practice mindfulness and contribute. Thanks. And Elena, I'd like to open the floor back up to you.
Yeah, thank you, Daliyana, for sharing. I hope this was very interesting for everyone. Definitely very great to hear, especially about the science behind mindfulness, that our brain can change. This is definitely a very new thought, I assume. Science is coming out every year. But you shared at the very beginning that you have been a mindfulness skeptic before you found mindfulness for yourself. Maybe you can tell us what has actually changed. And I will give our audience a little bit more time to type in their questions for you to answer in our Q&A session. So again, go back to Slido, #Daliyana, scan the QR code or use the link, and we start with my question, Daliyana.
Right, and I'm wondering, Elena, if it would be helpful to repeat the question.
Yeah, so you were a mindfulness skeptic at the very beginning, and you said, now you're basically advocating mindfulness. So what has changed?
Right. I think, first of all, I had and have excellent teachers. And there is a huge difference between being able to be guided by skilled teachers and not. And also understanding that I am not trying to meditate, but meditation in itself is a practice, and understanding that we have to let go of any notions we have of what that end result of that mindfulness practice is, because in letting that go, then we can fully relax into our practice and actually be present with the moment, with the current moment. In the beginning, when I was trying to meditate, I was trying really hard to focus really hard. And actually, this is not the point, because it's a soft focus and it's really about letting go of all of that and just sitting with yourself and the present moment and being aware of what's happening within and without. And only then, only when I let go of all notions of what mindfulness is, was I able to actually enjoy it.
Okay, so would this actually be your advice for someone who is beginning? That you don't set basically the bar too high and pressure yourself and expect too much?
Absolutely. I couldn't say it any better, Elena. So at the end of the day, it is a practice. It's not easy. And sometimes it's different every day. So you could be practicing a specific practice on Monday and it's like, oh, I'm so good at this. And then on Tuesday, it's really tough. And you're wondering, oh, what changed? And it could very well be that it's because how you're feeling on a given day is different. And perhaps you need a different practice for that day as well. So we really need to stay in tune with what's really happening in ourselves and asking, what do I need right now? Do I really need to sit down and meditate, or do I need to go for a run maybe?
Yeah, this would have actually been my next question. I mean, mindfulness might seem a bit woohoo to some people, and they think about meditating, but there are other options. You said going outside. What are other ways to be mindful?
That's a great question. I think a lot of people associate mindfulness with a Zen monk meditating on the peak of a mountain. But actually, as you've seen, mindfulness is really about bringing our awareness to the present moment in a curious and kind way. So it can also be about mindful walking. So really about taking a walk and observing how you're feeling in your feet, or how nature is convening with you, for example. So it's really about being fully present in body and mind, and also taking note of what's happening around you. And you can also practice mindful eating as well. How many times we rush through lunch and then we're like, oh, we're done, and you barely tasted your meal, right? So you can also have a practice in mindful eating. You could start with your first 3 spoonfuls, and then maybe later on you could just gobble it down if you're in a hurry. But you can, as long as you bring your focus on a specific point, practice mindfulness. also, more importantly, it's about how you are conducting yourself throughout the day, how you are conducting yourself in relationships with others, mindfully speaking with others, mindfully listening to them as well. So there are many different ways to practice mindfulness.
Okay, so we have a lot of questions now from our audience, and I would like to pick up the very first one. How can I resolve conflicts with mindfulness?
That is a really good question. Conflict is something that is normal to us, and mindfulness is actually the basis for empathetic relationships and for connection as well. So the first thing I would invite you to do with conflicts is to practice empathy towards the other person. Is a very person. So perhaps first understanding where or how you're feeling in this given moment, and then after that, trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes and try to understand, why are they behaving this way? Is it possible that they're behaving this way because they think this will make them feel happy, safe, or respected? That's a shared human experience for all of us. And then approach that conversation with the person with kindness and curiosity, not to win an argument, but really coming in with an open mind and trying to find out, okay, what's really going on here? Can we put everything out on the table? And really try to understand the other person. So it's really about bringing awareness not just to how you're feeling, but what the other person might be going through, and awareness to the situation, and bringing everything out onto the table with curiosity.
Okay. Actually, we have another question related to that. So, how can I deal with team members who do not show any empathy to other colleagues?
Right. So that's also what that's a good question, because we do often meet people whom we think are emotionless or have no empathy towards others. And the point is, as long as you have a brain, you have an area in your brain that's related to emotions and therefore empathy. And what I always suggest is, you cannot change the world around you without changing yourself first. So if there are team members who are not being empathetic towards others, perhaps try to figure out, what's the best way to approach this conversation with them? How can I take them aside so that we can have a private conversation and explain to them that, hey, I've observed that in this situation, you had said A, B, C, or done X, Y, Z, and that made me or could have had this impact on the other person. And perhaps some people are just not aware of what they're doing as well. And then you could also suggest, if they're open to it, maybe an alternative to how they could have handled a specific situation. But certainly do not call them out and say, you're not being empathetic, because that does not help the situation at all.
Okay. So we have actually someone who is meditating every morning, but sometimes it feels like they cannot let go of thoughts. What are your tips here?
Right. So
the question.
I think I saw that question, but it's disappeared somehow, right? So yeah, there are thousands of different types of mindfulness practices out there. Thank you for putting that question up. And on days when you're having 20 million thoughts just zooming in your mind, sometimes a focused attention practice, meaning a practice in bringing your focus to one object, might not serve. And sometimes when you are in that situation, it might help for you to actually do something in mindful movement. So you are actually trying to focus on your breath and a specific movement at the same time as well, because your brain has a specific bandwidth and capacity, and it cannot handle too many things at the same time. So when you are practicing mindful movement, then something else quietens down in your brain, because it's trying so hard to move and sync the breath with the movement at the same time. But there are also other practices called open awareness practices. And in those practices, or for some of you who are familiar with yoga, it's called antarmona. You can then actually start to recognize the different thoughts. And the more you're recognizing them, the more they go away as well. So try different things and different techniques that work for you, because it's different strokes for different folks. Not the same thing will work for you every day. And perhaps something else won't work today, but it will work next year.
Yeah, so actually now the next question is, what is your daily mindfulness routine? So we have to tell people that maybe this works for you, but not for others. But maybe you can share a little bit to give them an idea of what they can try out.
Right. So I usually start the mornings with yoga. So that could be anything between 15 minutes to 90 minutes of yoga. It really depends on how I'm feeling that morning, to be fair. So my yoga practice is also different every day. So sometimes it's more active and sometimes it's a little bit more chilled. And what I also do is I schedule into my diary 3 to 4 points of time where I'm actually pausing and reflecting. So even if I'm in a meeting or I'm rushing between meetings, I have a reminder that pops up so that I actually just pause, take 1 breath or 3 breaths, and then I ask myself, what is important for me right now? Because I don't want to be rushing throughout the day and then at the end of the day not know what I've done or miss out on priorities. And actually that does 2 things. It calms me down and it refocuses me for the rest of the day. And I don't do this every evening, but I do this several evenings a week. I have a longer 30-minute meditation, and that is a meditation that is a body scan. I really love body scans because it really chills me out at the end of the day.
Great. Okay. So next question is related to social anxiety. So that person has issues with meeting colleagues in the office. It makes him or her anxious and uncomfortable. Do you have an advice here? Maybe breathing or?
I'm really sorry to hear that. I think this is really tough. If we were to take a step back, if you're feeling anxious, usually you're feeling it as well, probably up here in your chest and in your throat. And maybe it almost feels like it's coming up as well. What I often recommend in those moments is to bring all of your attention to your feet. So taking a few focused breaths and bringing all of your attention to your feet and just feeling the ground underneath your feet, feeling how the Mother Earth is actually holding you. And the other thing that you could also do is you can possibly just imagine holding all of your anxiety into your hand, like you can put it into a fist. And then with the other hand, just covering that fist, like as though you're giving your hand, your anxiety a hug. And if you wish, you can hold it to your chest. And while you're doing that, take a few breaths. And then think about your colleagues in the office and think about how they too, like you, want to be happy, safe, and respected. And that we are all here trying to make a living. We are all here trying to make do. We are all in a crisis as well. And perhaps you could ask yourself what would be in service for myself and for my colleagues, and perhaps in connecting with them and seeing how you can support them, you might also get over that anxiety to connect with them.
Amazing. I love that advice. I will remember that and use it. Thank you. So everyone now realized, I think, that you're very knowledgeable, and you're actually also a certified teacher at the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. So the next question is, can you a little bit talk about the journey to become certified?
Yeah, this is an interesting question because it's not like a university where you get accredited somehow. So there's no like global standards for these sort of institutes. But actually, my journey started with becoming a yoga teacher first. And the most important thing about finding teachers is making sure you're finding skilled teachers that embody their teachings. So they're not just great classroom teachers, but when you see them, they really walk the talk. And I started with yoga first, and initially with the contemplative meditation techniques there. And I took a deep dive training there. And then I went into Search Inside Yourself because I felt a lot of people might not be comfortable with the spiritual perspective of mindfulness. And I thought, how can we bring this in a way that's approachable to everyone? And with Search Inside Yourself, they have an excellent program, one of the best ones I've seen. And it's very structured. It's almost a year long, and it's a lot about working through the neuroscience of mindfulness and then going through some actual exams in a way and actually teaching the programs, and then you get certified. But that's just the first step. You also need to make sure you're continually studying and practicing yourself, because like I mentioned, you need to embody mindfulness and making sure that you are really doing things that are in service of others.
Lovely. So now we talked about you as a teacher, but the next question is, tell us a bit more about the teachers that helped you to access mindfulness, and how could someone, for example, in South America, find someone?
I could speak to the first one, but not so much the second one with South America, but maybe I could talk a little bit about how I found my teachers. Yes, so I think I think to a certain degree, we're all mindful. We know what feels right for us and what doesn't feel right for us. I looked for teachers for at least 5 years or so, and every time I came close to signing and paying for it, I decided not to because something didn't feel right. And then I met a few teachers really quite by accident. And also, actually, I just told everyone I was looking for the sort of programs. And that sort of came my way quite by serendipity. And I had a conversation with them. I asked them really difficult questions. And I really loved how they took on my questions with curiosity and kindness, never judgment. And I also saw or observed that they embodied the teachings. And so I signed on the dotted line, and that's how I started with my journey. So that's also to the second question on how can I access a spiritual leader in South America. I'm sorry, I don't know any. And that is a journey that is very subjective. It also really depends on your background. And I would persuade you to just look until it feels right, and always come with a critical mindset as well. Always question everything, because that's also part of mindfulness, questioning everything and really making sure that things make sense.
Yeah, so good luck for everyone that is looking for a teacher. I'm sure you will find someone. So the next question is, how can mindfulness make us better leaders of tomorrow?
Great. So someone's already thinking ahead. So mindfulness is actually the basis for self-awareness and self-management and motivation. So what really drives us, and also of social skills, of how we are actually relating to other people as well. So you can imagine that if you've got a great practice in mindfulness, also integrated in how you are conducting yourself in your day, how you are speaking with people, how you're listening to them, how you're trying to understand them or understand a work problem, you can imagine that this is a work environment that's not only very accepting and open, it's also an environment that feels safe so people can speak up as well. And when people feel safe in their environments, they tend to be more creative and probably more can-do and more passionate about their work. And we also already saw that we're living in a world that's brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. Mindfulness forms the basis for resilience. And if you're a leader of tomorrow, people are probably looking to you for direction, especially in difficult times. So more than ever, resilience would help you to become a better leader and guide them through really challenging times.
Great. So actually, we will go back to your professional life. So how did mindfulness help you? And maybe we can also address the other question, how did you implement, or give an advice, how can you implement mindfulness in your daily work?
Right. So if I read this question, it's really about how mindfulness helped me in my professional life. I can say that I opened with the fact that I'm a recovering perfectionist. So starting with myself, I used to work really long hours trying to perfect everything. And then at some point of time, mindfulness helped me to let go of all of those expectations and therefore making time for the things that really matter to me, like mindfulness or like my friends and my family, for example, and other things that bring me great joy. But the most important thing is it has also helped me to become a better colleague, to better manage teams and projects as well, to better manage stakeholders, difficult ones and challenging ones as well, because I'm not trying to win every argument. It's really about trying to understand all perspectives and trying to find a solution that works for us all. And the most important thing for my career path with mindfulness is it helped me to give pause to the speed at which I was living and asking myself, where do I want to go in life? And is this what I want to do? And so if I look back to my own career path, it might look like I took a meandering path in my career. And actually that was rather purposeful because I wanted to try out different things. And then if I really liked something, I would deep dive that. And then at some point of time, I made a mid-career shift into the dark and joined a department I knew nothing about. But that was also a decision I had made intentionally because I wanted to switch my path at some point of time. And I made that, I was only able to do that or make that decision calmly, though I was very nervous, through mindfulness. And maybe to the next question earlier, Elena, you wanted me to talk to with incorporating it in business life. Well, what I've done is incorporate a minute to arrive at work. So before some big meetings, we take a few breaths together and we check in on how we're all doing and helping everyone to really arrive in mind and body, because sometimes you're rushing from meeting to meeting. And I wanted to also make sure that they check in with their intentions for the meeting. And actually, that helps us to stay on top of our agenda in meetings. And that's really helpful as well.
Yeah, so I think you actually also answered the next question. How can I help others to become more mindful? And minding the time, I would basically end the Q&A session and ask you, can you summarize for us the key takeaways you want our audience takes away from this session?
Sure, Elena. Perhaps, I mean, the most important thing to take note of is mindfulness is about being in the current present moment, in our minds, in our bodies, and connecting with what's really happening around us with a curiosity and kindness as well, so that we can react or respond better to what's happening within us and to the people around us or to our environments. And that mindfulness can come in different forms. And I always say different strokes for different folks. So find something that works for you. And it's a practice after all. So it's going to be challenging. It's not going to be easy. And mindfulness is helping you to build essential skills for your future. So this is something I'd like to encourage you to continue doing for the rest of your life somehow, to rewire your brain as well. And the most important piece really is that mindfulness is meaningless when it is practiced in a vacuum, meaning we're practicing it just for ourselves. At the end of the day, we need to look into how we're using mindfulness to support our communities and the world at large. So really think about how you want to apply the benefits of mindfulness to the people and to the world around you.
Great. Thank you, Daliyana, for your presentation and the key learnings to just summarize. I think it was very helpful for everyone. And I mean, we have come together because we were so interested in what you would share with us on mindfulness. And I'm sure that everyone can now go home and start their mindfulness practice. Thank you so much. So we are already at the end of our session today. We would like to hear your opinion about the webinar and also give some suggestions of how we can improve. So you can scan the QR code and get to the survey. We also will share the link in the chat, and you can complete that whenever you are ready to do so. So now I have a final announcement to make. Our next webinar is coming up in June. In June, we have not yet had the confirmation, but most likely the next topic is on female empowerment. So scan the QR code you see here to register for our newsletter, and you will be getting informed on what is coming up in June. So thank you very much for participating today, for your great questions, and thank you, Daliyana, again, and see you next time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.